Tonight we wander into the clouds, literally. You're standing high in the Andes, and the mist is thick enough that you could almost spread it on toast if you were desperate. The air is thin, the cold bites your cheeks, and you hear the faint clink of metal, gold, no less. Not coins, not bars like in a heist movie, but small sheets hammered so thin that they shimmer like leaves trembling in the wind. You're about to spend the evening with people who lived their entire lives treating gold as more than just wealth. For the Muisca, it was sunlight you could hold. And you probably won't survive this altitude without gasping like you've just run a marathon in flip-flops. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle along a narrow ridge path. On one side, cliffs tumble into a misty abyss. On the other, fields of potatoes, quinoa, and maize stretch like patchwork blankets over the slopes. Somewhere below, you hear the trickle of streams, ribbons of water slicing through the land. This is where the Muisca people carved out a life, perched on a plateau in what you now know as Colombia. Their villages sit like islands among lakes, wetlands, and mountains. Everything glitters with meaning, and nothing glitters more than gold. The first thing you notice is how gold here doesn't sit hidden in treasure chests. It sparkles on ears, drapes over chests, and swings from noses. For the Muisca, gold isn't just bling, it's a conversation with the gods. Historians still argue whether the shine itself was thought to embody divine energy, or whether the craftsmanship was the sacred act, but either way, you sense that each piece isn't just decoration. It's a ritual frozen in metal. The artisans, the goldsmiths, work in quiet huts, bent over small clay furnaces. You see them shaping tiny figures called tunjos, little human or animal-shaped offerings meant to be cast into lakes. The fire flares, flickering against their faces, and you notice the rhythmic pumping of blowpipes that keep the flames alive. The temperature soars, the gold softens, and in that glow, you realize they're not just melting they're melting sunlight, catching it in clay molds, then cooling it into prayers. You can almost hear the whisper of those prayers in the hissing steam. And here's your first quirky fact. Sometimes, they mixed gold with copper to make what's called tumbaga, an alloy that's cheaper, lighter, and surprisingly versatile. Then, by a neat chemical trick with plant juices and fire, they made it look like pure gold again. Yes, ancient gilding, long before Instagram filters made everything golden hour fabulous. The soundscape around you is strange. Goldsmiths hammer thin sheets into shape, the clinks overlapping into a rhythm that reminds you of distant drums. Children giggle nearby, chasing guinea pigs, while a shaman mutters incantations under his breath. Somewhere, a flute sighs, its melody stretching across the mountain air. You lean back, close your eyes, and think, this doesn't feel like industry, it feels like worship. Your feet crunch on gravel as you approach a shrine, a simple wooden platform with feathers, stones, and figurines lined up neatly. A woman sprinkles crushed coca leaves on the ground, murmuring words you don't catch. A man sets down a golden pendant shaped like the sun. It glows faintly in the dawn light, as if the sun itself paused to admire its reflection. For the Muisca, the sun god Su was the giver of warmth and life, and to work with gold was to mimic his eternal fire. You almost want to bow, even if you don't know the right words. And yet, you also notice something very human in all this grandeur. A young apprentice drops a bit of molten gold on the ground and lets out a squeak that would make any modern teacher cringe. His master swats the air, muttering something that sounds suspiciously like rookie mistake. For all the sacredness, life is still full of little fumbles. The morning stretches on. You wander past terraces of crops, noticing how gold glints not only on jewelry but also on ceremonial staffs and masks. Imagine sitting down to eat with your elders while the person next to you is wearing a full golden face. Creepy dinner vibes, but also incredibly cool. Masks like these weren't casual, they were linked to ritual dances, political authority, and perhaps even communication with spirits. Historians still debate whether the masks were worn often in daily ceremonies or only on rare, transformative occasions. Either way, they're heavy. You try to picture balancing one on your nose without sneezing it straight into the soup. As you walk, the weather shifts. Clouds roll across the peaks, shadows stretch, and a sudden drizzle paints the earth darker. You realize how dependent everything is on rain here: fields, rituals, survival itself. Gold is sacred, yes, but without rain, gold becomes just shiny metal in an empty stomach. The people know this, and you will see soon enough how the shimmering traditions of Goldsmiths intertwine with the storm-calling rituals of rain. For now, you lean against a stone, gazing across the plateau. The horizon glows faintly, and you imagine the sun rising behind you, its first rays scattering like sparks across the land. You smile, thinking that if you had a coffee right now, it'd be the perfect morning. Except you don't. You're standing barefoot in damp grass, staring at a culture that worships sunlight in ways your local cafe can't compete with. And as the light hits, you see a woman lifting a golden disc toward the sky, her arms trembling slightly under the weight. The disc flares, dazzling, catching the dawn. People gather in silence, eyes locked on that fiery reflection. The message is clear: today begins with gold, and with gold, today begins with hope. You shuffle down the slope, your feet sinking into damp soil that clings stubbornly to your sandals. Every step takes you closer to a stream, and you can hear its chatter long before you see it. The water laughs over stones, sparkling in the morning light, and you realize this is more than just a convenient wash basin. To the Muisca, rivers are veins of the earth, carrying life, carrying messages, and yes, carrying gold. You crouch at the bank, cupping the icy water in your hands, and nearly jump as you notice flecks of gold swirling like tiny stars trapped in liquid. No big ingots here, just dust, flakes, whispers of sunlight waiting to be coaxed into form. The men and women here bend low over the water, their eyes sharper than hawks. They swirl bowls of sand and gravel in practiced circles, letting lighter grains drift away until only heavy glimmers remain. You try to copy their motion, but your bowl tips, and all you get is a wet lap. A kid watching bursts out laughing, which is comforting. Humiliation, it seems, is universal. You lean closer, and the people show you how each particle of gold is treated with reverence. They don't hoard it like misers. Instead, they speak to it, sometimes singing soft chants, as if coaxing the flakes to gather. One elder tells you the rivers are alive, that the waters breathe, and the gold is their gift. Historians still argue whether these songs were purely symbolic or whether the Muisca believed the rivers had ears. Either way, you find yourself humming along, hoping the river might grant you a speck of its treasure. Spoiler: it doesn't. As the gold dust collects, you notice something unexpected. Some is shaped not into jewelry but into small figurines, tunjos again, waiting to be cast back into the waters. Imagine that, hours of patient work, only to drop the finished piece into a lake. It feels like shredding your paycheck in front of your boss, but here it makes perfect sense. Gold returns to water, completing the cycle, feeding the spiritual current. Wealth isn't hoarded, it's circulated, like rain falling and rivers flowing. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. The Muisca sometimes mixed powdered gold with clay to paint ritual objects. Yes, golden paint, basically the original metallic Sharpie. Archaeologists have even found pottery with shimmering traces of it. It's not hard to imagine villagers squinting in the sun, pots sparkling like disco balls. Okay, maybe not disco, but you get the idea. You follow the stream as it meanders across the plateau. At one bend, women wash clothes, rhythmically slapping fabric against rocks, while children splash in the shallows. At another, a shaman sprinkles coca leaves into the current, whispering words of thanks. The river, it seems, doesn't distinguish between chores and ceremonies. It carries everything, mundane and sacred alike, down the same path. You pause at a pool where the water stills, and the reflection is almost too perfect. You see your own face, framed by the sky and clouds. Then you notice the face of someone else beside you, an old man, his hair silver, his hands coated in river mud. He shows you a nugget no bigger than a grape. To you, it looks like a lucky find. To him, it's a message from the gods. He points upstream, explaining how mountains guard their veins of ore like hidden hearts. Gold is not discovered so much as revealed, a secret shared only when the spirits allow. And here's where history pokes its head again. The Muisca had no mines in the way you might imagine, no massive tunnels with carts and picks. Instead, they relied on alluvial deposits, gently collecting what the rivers offered. Some scholars suggest this method was intentional, a way to avoid tearing apart the earth. Others argue it was simply practical. Digging deep mines in wet Andean soil was risky business. The debate lingers, and you find yourself liking the idea that restraint itself might have been sacred. By midday, the riverbanks glow in sunlight. The gold flakes, gathered in small gourds, are carried carefully back toward the village. You trail behind, your pockets suspiciously empty. A boy teases you by pretending to drop a nugget into your hand, then reveals it's just a pebble. You pretend to faint dramatically, and the crowd of kids howls with laughter. Comedy, you think, really is timeless. The walk back is slow. At one point, you step over a log and notice how roots twist into the soil like veins, just like the river below, just like the imagined flow of gold beneath your feet. You think about how, for the Muisca, these parallels weren't coincidences. The world above and below mirrored each other, and humans were just another link in the pattern. As you approach the village, the air smells of wood smoke and roasted maize. The gathered gold is carried into workshops, but you're told not all of it will see fire. Some will go straight to shrines, offered raw and untouched. You picture priests lifting flakes into the air, letting the wind decide their fate. It's both casual and cosmic, like tossing confetti at a wedding, except here the wedding is between humans and gods. The sun begins to sink, its light stretching long and golden across the plateau. You realize the entire day has been spent chasing sunlight in solid form, and still, the people don't hoard it for themselves. They'll craft it, wear it, dance with it, and then send it away. And maybe that's the secret, you never really own the sun, you just borrow its glow for a while. A sudden breeze ripples the grass, carrying the scent of rain. You glance at the clouds gathering in the distance, thick and brooding, and you sense what's coming. The rituals of gold are never far from the rituals of water, and soon, those clouds will demand attention. But for now, the river sings, the gourds are full, and the horizon gleams as though dipped in molten light. You step into the workshop just as the first sparks leap from the fire. The room is dim, the walls coated with soot, and the air so thick with smoke that your eyes water immediately. You cough politely, trying not to look like an amateur, but the Goldsmiths give you that knowing smirk, as if they've seen countless outsiders wilt under the weight of heat and smoke. The crackling flames sound alive, like they're laughing at you. The furnaces here are small clay ovens, each fed with charcoal and coaxed into life by artisans blowing through long pipes. You watch their cheeks puff, their breath steady, their eyes never leaving the tiny crucibles balanced carefully in the heart of the fire. Inside, the collected flakes and nuggets melt slowly into glowing pools, liquid sunlight dancing with every flicker of heat. The sight is mesmerizing. You feel like if you stared long enough, you could fall straight into that molten glow and never crawl back out. A young apprentice stirs the crucible with a stick. The molten gold lurches, and for one terrifying moment, a splash threatens to leap out. You flinch so hard you nearly trip backward, which earns you a ripple of chuckles from the workers. One mutters something that's clearly the ancient equivalent of rookie mistake, and you decide to take 2 careful steps back. But the goldsmiths, they're calm, steady. Their hands move with the precision of surgeons. And this isn't just technical skill, it's spiritual discipline. Historians still argue whether every smith was also a priest, or whether the 2 roles were sometimes separate, but either way, the boundary here feels blurry. Every action, the stoking of coals, the pouring of molten metal, is performed with a kind of reverence, like a dance choreographed over generations. You notice the molds lined neatly on a shelf. They're made from clay or stone, sometimes shaped like animals, warriors, or even entire scenes. Each mold is fragile, one mistake and it shatters. You watch as one artisan pours molten gold carefully into a narrow channel. The metal hisses, the mold trembles, and steam rises in ghostly curls. The silence in the room is absolute, except for one loud sneeze from an apprentice, which makes everyone jump. A smith scolds him, but you catch the hint of a smile behind the sternness. Even sacred fires can't avoid the occasional allergy. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. The Muisca sometimes used lost wax casting, an ingenious method where a wax figure was covered in clay, then melted away when the mold was fired, leaving a perfect hollow for molten gold. Modern jewelers still use this technique. Think about that, the same method that might have produced the famous Muisca raft, that golden scene of a chieftain on a boat, is still alive in workshops today. It's a reminder that innovation doesn't always belong to modern times. Sometimes, it's been quietly glowing in the past all along. The air grows hotter, and sweat clings to your skin like another layer of clothing. You watch the smiths hammer sheets of gold into thin foils, the sound ringing sharp and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. The noise becomes hypnotic, like a drumbeat pulsing through the walls. You wonder if they ever used the sound itself as part of ritual, a secret percussion to accompany chants. Historians don't have proof, but you can't shake the feeling that every sound mattered here, every spark carried weight. One smith holds up a half-finished pendant, a disc with rays etched around its edge. He polishes it carefully with sand, and when it catches the light, the entire workshop seems to glow brighter. You can't help blurting, "That's beautiful." The smith doesn't understand your words, but he smiles knowingly, as if beauty doesn't need translation. The day stretches on, and you realize how much labor hides behind even the smallest object. Hours of collecting, melting, shaping, polishing, all for something that might eventually be thrown into a lake as an offering. It's not waste, it's devotion. You think of how modern people hoard gold in vaults, locked away from the sun, while here, gold is alive only when it moves through fire, through hands, through water. As the afternoon wanes, the apprentices sweep the floor, gathering every stray shaving, every speck of dust. Nothing is wasted. Even the tiniest scrap might become part of a new figure or pendant. You think of glitter spilled on a carpet, impossible to clean, but here, it's treasure, scooped up with reverence. Then comes a moment you won't forget. The master smith takes a freshly cast tunjo, still warm from the mold, and holds it up. It's a tiny human figure, arms raised as if in eternal praise. The room quiets. He whispers something, then passes it to a shaman waiting nearby. The shaman cradles it, nods, and wraps it in cloth. Tomorrow, it will be offered to the lake. For now, it rests in silence, a spark of devotion waiting to return to water. You step outside, grateful for the cooler air. The sky is streaked with orange, and the smell of rain drifts closer. You glance back at the workshop, at the glow still seeping through its doorway. You think about how this fire never really dies, it burns in cycles, just like the sun, just like the gold itself. And as you walk back toward the village, you can't shake the feeling that you've just watched more than metallurgy. You've watched belief take shape in flame, faith hammered into form, devotion cooled into solid light. It's enough to make you dizzy, or maybe that's just the smoke still clinging to your lungs. Either way, You know tomorrow will carry you deeper into their golden world. You wake to the sound of tapping, steady and rhythmic, like rain that forgot how to fall and decided to land in measured beats instead. At first, you think it's just someone fixing a roof or smashing a stubborn potato, but as you follow the sound, you realize it's everywhere. From hut to hut, goldsmiths bend over anvils, their hammers kissing sheets of metal with uncanny precision. Tap, tap, tap. The village feels like it's alive with heartbeat percussion, and you fall into step with it without even trying. The air smells faintly of charcoal and roasted maize, mixed with the metallic tang of freshly worked gold. You crouch near one of the smiths, careful not to get too close. Last thing you want is a stray hammer giving you a very permanent nose piercing. The man's hands move quickly, folding and flattening a sheet of gold so thin it trembles with every strike. You wonder how it doesn't just tear like paper, but then you notice the rhythm, not too hard, not too soft. It's less hammering, more coaxing. Like convincing a stubborn cat to get off your keyboard. Here's your historical fact for the day. Gold sheets like these were often used to cover wooden or cotton objects, transforming ordinary things into gleaming ritual pieces. Imagine a carved staff suddenly blazing with sunlight, or a headdress covered in delicate foils that shimmer with every movement. Gold wasn't about durability, it was about radiance, the illusion of eternal light. You wander from hut to hut, and the sounds merge into something that feels musical. Not a concert you'd buy tickets for, but more like a drum circle that got hijacked by blacksmiths. A group of children sit nearby, beating sticks on the ground, imitating the rhythm. One boy throws in an offbeat thwack, and the others burst out laughing, scolding him as though he ruined the sacred playlist. The hammering echoes out into the valley, bouncing off stone walls and mixing with the cries of birds. You close your eyes and imagine the whole plateau pulsing with it, a sound that might be as much ritual as work. Historians still argue whether these sounds were purely incidental or if they were considered offerings in themselves, a kind of sonic prayer sent to the gods. Standing here, with the rhythm humming through your bones, you're tempted to believe the latter. A smith shows you how they shape masks. He starts with a rounded form, then presses and taps until a face emerges, cheeks, nose, lips, eye holes. The expression is blank, almost serene, like someone halfway between human and divine. He holds it up, and for a moment, the sunlight flashes across it, making the mask look alive. You nearly stumble back, half expecting it to start speaking. It doesn't, of course, but you do catch your own reflection staring back at you, distorted and shimmering. Creepy, but also strangely humbling. Quirky tidbit: some Muisca masks weren't meant for wearing at all. Archaeologists have found miniature versions that would have been impossible to strap to a face. These tiny masks were purely offerings, symbols of presence without the burden of weight. Basically, the ancient equivalent of fun-size candy bars. You don't eat less sugar, you just present it differently. The afternoon deepens, and you notice how every hammer strike changes depending on the object. Small tunjos require delicate taps, pendants need firm shaping, and masks demand a steady tempo like a drumbeat. You can almost imagine a coded rhythm: tap 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 for an offering, thud thud ring for a pendant, tick 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 for a mask. No sheet music, just memory passed from master to apprentice like a secret language. You sit for a while near a fire pit, watching a group of apprentices work together. They trade tools, steady each other's hands, and occasionally joke in hushed tones. One boy pretends to miss a strike and narrowly avoids whacking his own thumb, then grins as if it was all part of the plan. The older smith rolls his eyes but hides a chuckle. Sacred traditions or not, comedy survives every century. Then comes a moment of stillness. One hammer falls silent, then another, until the whole village seems to pause. The smiths step back, wiping sweat from their brows, and gather around the finished pieces laid carefully on mats. There are masks, pendants, small figurines all gleaming faintly in the late afternoon sun. The silence feels almost louder than the hammering. You sense a shift. This is no longer work. It's reverence. A shaman arrives, carrying a pouch of herbs and a feathered staff. He circles the objects, murmuring words you don't understand, sprinkling smoke over the gleaming forms. You catch the scent of burning resin, sharp and sweet. The objects are blessed, their metallic heartbeat silenced until the next ritual carries them onward. You realize you've been holding your breath. The air is heavy with meaning, as though the gold itself is listening. When the shaman finishes, the smiths smile, some stretching their tired arms, others leaning on their tools. The rhythm will return tomorrow, and the day after, but for now, the music of hammers rests. As evening falls, the valley grows quiet except for the wind. You walk away slowly, the phantom beat still pulsing in your ears. You wonder if, centuries from now, someone will still hear it, the metallic rhythm of a people shaping sunlight, one careful tap at a time. The night is cool, and mist coils low around the village, as though the mountains are exhaling after a long day. You're drawn toward a glow at the center of the plaza. People gather around a fire, not the ordinary cooking sort but a blaze surrounded by offerings, flowers, feathers, and gleaming gold. The flames crackle, shadows flicker, and then someone steps forward holding a mask. It's unlike anything you've seen up close before. Thin sheets of gold pressed into the shape of a human face, the eyes wide, the mouth just slightly open, as if caught mid-breath. You realize it's not meant to mimic one particular person, it's a symbol, a bridge between the human and the divine. When the light catches, the face looks alive for a heartbeat, then vanishes back into stillness. You shiver, not entirely from the cold. The man lifts the mask and places it over his own face. Suddenly, he's no longer himself. The crowd murmurs, children press against their mother's legs, and the air thickens with expectation. The mask glows in the firelight, making him look half spirit, half human. Historians still argue whether such masks were worn primarily by priests, chiefs, or dancers. Some believe they embodied ancestors, others say they represented gods themselves. Standing here, it doesn't matter which theory is true, you feel the presence in your bones. The masked figure begins to move. Slowly at first, his steps are deliberate, like he's wading through another world. Then the rhythm builds. Drums join in, flutes sigh, and the golden face bobs and sways, catching and scattering firelight. Every turn throws flashes across the crowd, as if the sun itself has descended for a visit. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some masks were designed with dangling plates or fringes that shimmered and clinked when the dancer moved. Imagine a built-in glitter effect with bonus sound design. The Muisca weren't just making masks, they were crafting special effects centuries before Hollywood. You inch closer, careful not to intrude, and notice how the people respond. Some sway along, their eyes closed. Others watch intently, as though looking straight through the gold into whatever spirit hides behind it. Children whisper nervously, but even they don't dare giggle too loudly. The mask commands silence and awe. The dancer pauses, then raises his hands. He holds a small golden disc, etched with rays like the sun. He lifts it toward the sky, the flames reflecting off its surface so brightly you have to squint. For a moment, it looks like two suns exist, one in the heavens, one in his hands. The crowd gasps softly, the sound more like a prayer than surprise. Masks like this were never just decoration. They were power condensed into form. To wear one was to transform, to step out of human limits. You think about how in your own world, masks often hide identity. Here, they amplify it, stretching a person into something larger, something luminous. The ritual winds down. The dancer removes the mask, his face slick with sweat, his breath coming fast. He looks ordinary again, but the mask still glows faintly in his hands, as if it remembers the dance. He places it carefully beside the fire, and others come forward to lay their own golden offerings. The flames roar higher, sparks climbing into the night sky, carrying prayers with them. You glance upward. The stars peek through the mist, sharp and cold, but your eyes keep returning to the mask lying by the fire. It feels like it's watching you, even though its eyes are nothing more than hollow cutouts. You try to shake the feeling, muttering to yourself that it's just metal. Then you remember this is the same metal they treat as captured sunlight, the same metal offered to gods in lakes. Just metal doesn't quite cut it anymore. Someone touches your shoulder gently. An elder leads you to a wooden bench, offering a cup of warm chicha, the fermented maize drink that tastes somewhere between sweet cider and a dare. You sip, nearly cough, and decide you're officially awake for the rest of the night. The elder chuckles, patting your back, then gestures toward the mask as if to say, "See? It changes you too." The fire burns lower, and the crowd disperses slowly. Children nod off on their mothers' backs, apprentices carry tools away, and the dancer sits quietly, staring at the mask he wore. You watch as he wraps it in cloth, treating it not as an object but as a guest who needs careful tending. Tomorrow, it may be used again, or it may vanish into a lake forever. As the embers fade, you realize how quiet the mountains have become. No hammering, no chanting, just the soft rustle of wind across grass. You breathe deeply, the chill settling into your bones, and think about how fragile yet enduring these traditions are. A mask is thin, delicate, but the meaning behind it could weigh heavier than stone. The night ends, and you lie back on the ground, gazing at stars sprinkled across the sky. You wonder what it would feel like to wear such a mask, to lose yourself in its glow, to become more than just you for a few fleeting moments. Maybe you'd feel ridiculous, maybe transcendent, maybe both. Either way, you'd never look at your own reflection quite the same again. Morning drapes itself over the plateau, and the mist unravels like old fabric. You find yourself trailing behind a caravan of traders. They move slowly but steadily, llamas laden with bundles swaying like awkward ships at sea. The air smells of sweat, salt, and damp wool, and you wonder how anyone convinces a llama to cooperate. Judging from the occasional stubborn bray and the handler's size, the answer is, barely. The bundles intrigue you. Some contain golden ornaments, pendants, nose rings, tiny figurines carefully wrapped in cloth. Others hold sacks of salt, gleaming crystals from the Zipaquira mines. Salt here isn't just seasoning, it's currency. The Muisca were masters of the salt trade, boiling brine from springs and packing the dried crystals into neat cakes. Imagine paying your rent in salt blocks instead of cash. Your landlord might complain, but your dinner would be amazing. You notice another bundle glimmering with green emeralds. Deep, translucent, and almost hypnotic. The Muisca pulled them from mines at Chiva and Muso, treating them not merely as pretty stones but as living gifts from the earth. Historians still argue whether emeralds were valued more than gold. Some say yes, because of their rarity. Others claim gold always held the higher symbolic weight. Either way, the caravan glitters with both, a moving treasury on 4 legs. As you walk alongside, one trader explains, through gestures and patient pointing, how goods travel between regions. Gold flows outward, traded for cotton from warmer valleys, tropical fruits, and seashells from distant coasts. In return, salt and emeralds travel back, weaving networks of reciprocity. You realize you're witnessing an economy without coins, where value is measured in trust, tradition, and shimmering objects that double as prayers. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some villages, they shaped salt cakes into small figurines before trading them. Picture showing up at market with a salt llama or salt warrior, like ancient edible action figures. Practical? Not really. Imagine your warrior dissolving in a rainstorm, but charming all the same. The trail winds along cliffs, The drop so sheer you have to avoid looking down unless you want your knees to start trembling uncontrollably. The llamas seem unbothered, trotting as if gravity were a suggestion. You, on the other hand, grip a rock for reassurance. One boy notices your pale face and smirks. Congratulations, you've become the caravan entertainment. At midday, the traders pause by a high meadow. They unwrap some bundles, laying out gold pendants that flash in the sunlight. In exchange, another group arrives carrying cotton textiles, dyed in reds and blues, their patterns like woven stories. The two groups greet each other with embraces and laughter, the kind that suggests this is less business and more reunion. Trade here isn't haggling, it's kinship extended across valleys. You're offered roasted maize and a sip of chicha. You brace yourself this time, but the sour kick still sneaks up on you. A trader slaps your back as if to say, "Good effort." You nod, pretending your throat isn't currently plotting revenge. The afternoon wears on, and the caravan continues. You pass shrines along the way, simple piles of stones or carved markers where travelers leave offerings. A few flakes of gold, a shell, a sprig of coca. Even on the road, devotion moves with the people. You kneel briefly, leaving behind a pebble. Not gold, not emerald, but hey, it's the thought that counts. The terrain shifts as you descend into a warmer valley. The air thickens, the vegetation grows denser, and birds scream in bursts of color above. Traders from this region bring baskets of fruit, bright guavas, plantains, even cacao beans. One boy offers you a fruit so sour it makes your eyes water instantly. Everyone laughs at your puckered face, and you're starting to think comedy might be the unspoken currency of trade too. By evening, the caravan returns to the plateau, bundles lighter but hearts apparently fuller. You watch as the goldsmiths receive new materials, cotton threads, feathers, and emeralds, and already begin imagining how they'll transform them into ceremonial pieces. It's not just exchange of goods, it's exchange of inspiration, each community feeding the other's traditions. As night falls, the llamas are unburdened, their sighs almost human with relief. Fires spark along the village edges, and people gather to share stories of the road storms endured, rivers crossed, a particularly stubborn llama named something like Little Devil. You laugh along, realizing how much of life here is about weaving connection, whether through gold, salt, emeralds, or just the shared struggle of coaxing a grumpy pack animal uphill. You lie back under the stars, the day's journey still humming in your muscles. You think about how fragile the line is between wealth and worship here. Gold is sacred, emeralds are alive, salt is essential, and trade is more than profit, it's the stitching of worlds together. You drift towards sleep with the rhythm of llamas still clopping in your ears, as if the earth itself keeps walking long after you've stopped. The morning greets you with a damp chill, the kind that clings to your clothes no matter how much you rub your arms. You wander toward a hillside where people are gathering, baskets balanced on hips, ropes coiled at their feet. Today, it's not gold they're after, but emeralds, the green eyes of the earth. The mine itself isn't a vast industrial pit like you might imagine. It's a steep slope scarred with veins of rock, narrow passages cut into stone, and shafts so dark they look like mouths ready to swallow anyone careless enough to slip. You watch as men and women enter the openings with torches, their flames wobbling like nervous fireflies. The sound of picks against stone echoes out, sharp and uneven, mixing with the murmur of voices. Some carry baskets of loose rock back to the surface, while others kneel to sort through the rubble, searching for that impossible gleam. You crouch beside a boy no older than 12. He sifts quickly, discarding grey stones until his hand freezes. He pulls up a small emerald, just big enough to catch the light. For a second, it looks like the hillside itself is blinking at you. Here's your historical fact. The Muisca were among the earliest societies in the Americas to systematically extract emeralds, particularly from the Chiva and Muso mines. These stones traveled far beyond the plateau, traded north and south, sometimes even reaching Caribbean coasts. Emeralds weren't just pretty, they were currency, diplomacy, and sacred gifts all in one. The boy grins and runs off to show his mother, leaving you staring at the dirt, convinced you'll never spot another gleam. You pick up a pebble that looks promising, rub it against your sleeve, and, nope. Just a rock. Congratulations, you've invented disappointment mining. Quirky tidbit: there are legends that the emeralds came from the tears of deities, shed in grief or joy depending on who's telling the story. Some people still whisper that emeralds grow back after being taken, like the earth healing its wounds. Scientists scoff, of course, but standing here, with that uncanny glow in your hands, you're not so sure. Deeper in the mine, the air is hot and close. You duck your head to follow a group carrying torches. The light flickers across wet stone, shadows jumping like restless spirits. Someone hums softly, the sound echoing in eerie ripples. Historians still argue whether mining was seen as strictly labor or as a sacred act in itself. Judging from the cautious singing, the whispered prayers, and the offerings left at tunnel mouths, you'd lean toward the sacred. Every blow of a pick feels like a negotiation with the earth asking, not taking. You back out gratefully into the open air, lungs aching for a full breath. The hillside bustles with activity, women sorting, children playing, elders overseeing. A shaman approaches, carrying a small bowl of water. He rinses each emerald before lifting it to the light, murmuring words of thanks. He doesn't pocket them or weigh them like merchants would. Instead, he places the most radiant ones aside, marked for ritual. Others will be traded, woven into jewelry, or offered in ceremonies. By midday, the ground is littered with broken stone, the air full of dust. The emeralds, those rare green sparks, are collected in gourds. You're allowed to hold one, and it's lighter than you expect. Smooth, cool, almost unnervingly alive. You wonder how many hands have passed such stones, how many prayers whispered over them before they vanished into lakes or were worn by chieftains. As the sun dips, workers pause to eat. You join them, sharing roasted tubers and a stew so smoky it makes you cough but also warms your chest. Someone teases you, miming your dramatic coughs, and you decide you've officially become the mine mascot. Later, as baskets are packed up, you notice a ritual forming. A group of miners gather by a stone marker, laying a few emeralds and gold flakes at its base. A shaman sprinkles coca leaves, chanting low. The offering is small compared to what's been hauled from the hillside, but it feels weightier than all the baskets combined. You realize that for every stone carried away, something must be given back. Night falls, and the mine quiets. You sit on a rock, the stars blinking into existence above, the same way emeralds blinked from the earth below. You think about how gold catches the sun, but emeralds capture the forest, the rivers, the shadows. One shines with fire, the other with cool breath. Together, they balance the world the Muisca inhabit. As you drift into thought, you imagine the earth itself keeping score, gold as its laughter, emeralds as its tears. And the people here, goldsmiths and miners alike, spend their lives listening closely, making sure they never mistake one for the other. Mist curls thick around the plateau again, clinging to your hair and skin, softening every sound until the world feels muffled. You follow a trail toward the largest lake you've seen yet, its surface smooth as polished obsidian. The water stretches so wide it seems to swallow the horizon, and the air smells faintly of wet earth and crushed plants. Locals call it sacred, and you immediately understand why. The stillness feels different here, heavier, deliberate, as if the lake is listening. People are already gathered on the shore. Women carry baskets of flowers, feathers, and food. Men cradle golden tunjos and pendants in their palms, their expressions hushed. Children whisper but fall silent when an elder raises his hand. The procession begins quietly, with footsteps crunching in the damp soil. No shouting, no fanfare, just murmurs, the rustle of cloth, and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface. You can almost hear your own heartbeat against the silence. At the water's edge, the shaman steps forward. His cloak is heavy with feathers, his staff tipped with polished stone. He chants slowly, words rolling like waves, and the crowd answers with low hums. He lifts a small golden figure, arms outstretched, and holds it over the lake. For a moment, the figure catches the faint light, blazing like fire in the mist. Then, without hesitation, he drops it. The splash is soft, almost swallowed instantly, and ripples spread out in perfect circles. The offering is gone, claimed. Here's your historical fact. Lakes like Guatavita were central to Muisca ritual. They believed these waters connected to divine realms, and offerings of gold and emeralds ensured harmony between humans and gods. Archaeologists have dredged countless tunjos, ornaments, and even entire golden discs from lakebeds, each a piece of faith cast into the deep. The next offering is stranger. A small mask, no bigger than your palm, is lowered into the water tied to a stone. The mask seems to stare back at you as it sinks, its eyes catching one last glimmer before vanishing. A chill runs down your spine, and you think, maybe jokingly, maybe not, if that thing shows up in your bathtub later, you're moving out immediately. Quirky tidbit: some legends claim that the lakes are bottomless, portals straight into other worlds. People tell stories of golden cities shimmering below the surface, or spirits who guard the treasures, demanding respect. Rationally, you know lakes have bottoms, muddy, heavy, and very real. But watching offerings vanish so quickly, you almost believe the stories. The procession continues. A woman scatters emerald chips into the water, each one flashing green before disappearing. Another pours a bowl of chicha, the liquid clouding the surface like a drink offered to the gods. Children toss flower petals, which float briefly before sinking, their colors fading into the dark. Historians still argue whether everyone in the community participated equally in these rituals or if the offerings were controlled by elites. Standing here, it feels communal. Even the smallest child adds something, maybe just a handful of leaves, but every gesture ripples into the lake. The water doesn't discriminate, it accepts all gifts. The shaman raises his voice, and the hum of the crowd deepens. He dips his staff into the water, then lifts it high, droplets raining down on the people. They laugh softly, reaching out as if the drops themselves are blessings. You tilt your head back, letting a few cold splashes land on your face. It stings in the chilly air, but you don't wipe it away. The mist thickens, and suddenly the lake looks endless, merging with the sky. The people stand in silence now, watching the surface. Nothing happens, no thunderbolt, no divine apparition. Just ripples fading into stillness. And yet, you sense satisfaction among them, as though the silence itself is the answer. Sometimes, devotion doesn't need fireworks, it just needs presence. As the crowd disperses, you linger at the edge. The ground is slick, and you kneel carefully, peering into the dark. For a moment, you think you see a golden glint far below, then another, then dozens, like stars scattered in an underwater sky. It's probably your imagination, or maybe not. Either way, you whisper a quiet thanks, just in case the lake is indeed listening. Walking back, you notice how calm everyone seems. The offerings weren't loss, they were release. Gold isn't meant to stay locked in boxes or strung on necks forever. It's meant to move, to shimmer briefly in the world before sinking back into mystery. The trail home is muddy, and you nearly slip, earning a stifled laugh from a boy behind you. You mutter something about wet shoes being the true curse of humanity, and even though he doesn't understand, he grins. Sacred or not, some things, like clumsy strangers, are universally funny. Night settles as you reach the village. The lake still hums quietly in your mind, its surface rippling behind your eyes. You wonder how many centuries of offerings lie beneath, how many prayers are piled there, layer after glittering layer. And you wonder whether the gods ever answer, or if the act of offering is the answer itself. The plateau greets you with restless clouds, the kind that shuffle across the sky like bored giants. A soft drizzle taps your shoulders as you join a gathering in the village plaza. Today is no ordinary day. Today, the people are calling the rains with full ceremony. You can feel it in the air, like static before a storm. The procession begins with music, not the kind you hum in the shower, but a deep, pulsing rhythm made by drums stretched with animal hides. Flutes carved from bone trill above the beat, thin and piercing, like the whistling of wind through a canyon. The sound blends into something hypnotic, and you feel your steps falling in time without meaning to. Somewhere, a mischievous part of you wonders if you're now under contract as a backup dancer. Men appear in cloaks decorated with bright feathers, reds and yellows shimmering against the grey sky. Each wears a headdress that makes them look like walking fragments of rainbow. Women carry bowls of water mixed with petals, which they sprinkle on the ground as they walk. The droplets darken the soil, small imitations of the rains they hope to summon. Children scatter seeds, giggling as they run between the dancers, their energy folding neatly into the ritual. At the center of the plaza, a figure steps forward, the shaman, adorned with gold discs that catch what little light filters through the clouds. His face is painted with black lines, sharp as lightning bolts. He raises his arms, calling on Chibchakam, the spirit of rain, storms, and justice. The name rolls off his tongue with weight, like thunder compressed into syllables. Everyone echoes it, the sound swelling until it feels like the sky must be listening. Here's your historical fact. Chibchakam was not only the god of rain but also a protector of tradesmen and workers. The Muisca believed his storms punished those who disrespected balance, and his rains rewarded those who honored tradition. You, standing in the drizzle, wonder whether forgetting your umbrella qualifies as disrespect. The crowd shifts as dancers whirl faster. Their movements are not chaotic, they mimic the path of winds, spiraling inward and outward, arms raised like branches swaying. The drums pound harder, echoing in your chest, and the flutes wail like gulls over water. It's mesmerizing, until a child accidentally bumps into you and nearly knocks you into the seed bowl. Congratulations, you almost became part of the harvest. Quirky tidbit: some accounts suggest that during droughts, the people wore special cloaks painted with storm patterns, believing the very designs could tempt clouds to form. Imagine your wardrobe doubling as a weather app. Today, though, the feathers and gold are the main lure, shimmering like bait cast into the heavens. The shaman continues chanting, sprinkling coca leaves into a fire. The smoke rises in a twisting column, and for a moment, it blends seamlessly with the swirling dancers. The effect is uncanny, like watching humans dissolve into sky, feather by feather, breath by breath. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were purely symbolic performances or whether participants truly believed they could shift the weather. Standing here, with smoke in your lungs and drums rattling your ribs, belief feels almost irrelevant. The ritual is the weather. It bends the atmosphere inside you even if clouds never answer. The drizzle stops. Everyone notices. The air hangs heavy, the plaza quiet except for the fading beat of the drums. The shaman points to the horizon, and all eyes follow. Darker clouds are gathering, thick as ink poured into water. A murmur runs through the people, half awe, half relief. You can't help but glance around, half expecting a stagehand somewhere to flip a giant cosmic switch. The ceremony shifts into celebration. Women throw more petals into the air, men stomp the ground with renewed vigor, and children laugh, certain their voices are carrying straight into the sky. You feel caught in the momentum, clapping awkwardly at first, then giving in, your palms stinging with the rhythm. It doesn't matter that you don't know the steps, the point is joining the swell. By late afternoon, the sky is a bruised purple, and thunder rumbles faintly. People smile, confident the ritual has been heard. Offerings are laid at a shrine, tunjos, emerald chips, bowls of maize. Each is placed carefully, as if arranging a feast for invisible guests. You place a pebble again, your signature contribution, and this time someone pats your shoulder as if to say, "Nice effort, rookie." Night draws near, and the clouds thicken. A single bolt of lightning splits the horizon, so sudden and sharp it makes your stomach flip. The crowd gasps, then cheers, as though Chipchicum himself just winked. The storm hasn't fully broken, but anticipation hums in every breath. You retreat toward the village edge, the music still echoing in your ears, the smell of smoke clinging to your clothes. Behind you, the people keep singing, keep dancing, keep believing. And maybe, just maybe, the sky will oblige. The night grows heavy, pressing down like a thick blanket you can't quite kick off. The air feels wrong, parched, brittle, even though clouds loom overhead. Days have passed since the great procession, and still the rains have not come. The ground cracks under your feet, fissures spreading through the soil like desperate veins. Crops wilt, their leaves curling as if trying to fold back into the earth. The people's voices grow quieter each evening, laughter replaced by murmurs. You walk among them, watching as hope is stretched thinner. The rituals continue, but with sharper edges. Drums beat harder, chants rise louder, movements faster, as if volume itself might convince the sky. Children carry fewer flowers now, seeds saved for planting instead of scattering. You see worry etched into faces that only days ago brimmed with joy. Even the llamas seem crankier, refusing to move with their usual reluctant grace. It's official, when llamas are in bad moods, civilization itself is in crisis. The shaman gathers the people again, this time with urgency in his voice. He speaks of Chipchicum, reminding them of his dual nature, giver of life and punisher of imbalance. Here's your historical fact. In Muisca belief, droughts were often seen as signs of divine displeasure, a cosmic correction when humans failed in ritual or injustice. To restore balance, offerings had to be grander, sacrifices deeper. Tonight, the crowd prepares with solemn determination. Tunjos and pendants are polished, emeralds chosen, salt cakes shaped. Families bring what little they can spare, and you can feel the weight of it. These aren't just ornaments, they're survival. One mother clutches a small golden frog before kissing it and handing it to the shaman. Frogs, she believes, carry rain in their throats, croaking clouds into existence. Quirky tidbit: some stories claim people once offered music competitions to the gods, each village sending flutists and drummers to outplay the others until the heavens relented. Imagine trying to summon rain by out-jamming your neighbors, basically a cosmic battle of the bands. You glance around, half hoping someone has a guitar stashed under their poncho. The offerings tonight are more elaborate. You watch as elders coat figures with resin, making them gleam wet in the firelight, as though already touched by rain. Women braid feathers into cloaks, their colors screaming against the dark. The dancers take their places, and the ceremony begins again, but now it carries the sharp edge of desperation. Feet stamp harder, arms stretch wider, drums thunder until you feel your ribs rattling. Historians still argue whether sacrifices of animals, or even humans, were ever part of these rituals. Some accounts claim they were rare but real, while others insist the Muisca offered only symbolic items, never blood. Standing here, watching the shaman pause with a knife glinting in his hand, you feel that old uncertainty. He cuts not flesh but maize stalks, slicing them neatly, their juice glistening like tears. The crowd exhales, tension breaking for a moment. It's agriculture that bleeds, not people. The ceremony stretches into midnight. Smoke coils upward, chants rise, offerings splash into sacred bowls of water placed in the plaza. The people's voices tremble now, not just in reverence but in exhaustion, hunger, fear. Still, they sing. Still, they dance. You feel your own throat tighten, not from smoke, but from the aching persistence of it all. But the sky remains silent. Clouds hover, heavy but unmoving, teasing like a cruel audience refusing applause. You crane your neck upward, silently begging, just a little sprinkle, come on. Nothing. Not a drop. If the gods are listening, they're ghosting everyone spectacularly. By dawn, the fires die down, and people drift home, shoulders slumped. The shaman remains, kneeling in the ashes, his hands pressed to the ground. You sit beside him in silence, unsure if you're intruding or part of the vigil. The earth feels brittle under your palms, pulsing faintly with heat, as if thirsting itself. You walk back slowly, hearing the hush of a community that has given all it can and still received nothing. Crops will need water soon, or hunger will come. Faith will need answers soon, or doubt will creep in. And you, a witness stumbling along in second-hand sandals, feel the fragility of it all. When you finally lie down, eyes gritty, sleep doesn't come easily. The silence is too loud. No rain drumming the roof, no frogs calling, just dry, relentless quiet. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder if Chipchikam is watching, waiting, or simply indifferent. The morning drags itself awake under a pale sky, streaked faintly with color. The clouds are reluctant, thin and half-hearted, but in their gaps you glimpse a rainbow arcing faintly above the horizon. It's not the dramatic, cartoon rainbow you'd slap on a cereal box. This one is fragile, almost shy, a smear of color bending out of the gray. The villagers notice immediately. Their voices lift with excitement, fingers pointing, children tugging sleeves. You realize the rainbow isn't just decoration, it's a promise. The shaman steps into the plaza, staff raised high. He calls everyone to look, his voice trembling not with exhaustion now, but with awe. He speaks of Bochika, the wise teacher who once split a great rock at Tequendama Falls to release floodwaters and save the people. The rainbow, he says, is Bochika's bridge, a sign that balance will return. Here's your historical fact. In Muisca mythology, Bochika was a civilizing hero who taught agriculture, weaving, and worship. When floods threatened to destroy the world, he struck the mountains, carving waterfalls to drain the waters. Rainbows became symbols of his covenant with humanity, much like how other cultures read arcs of color as divine reassurance. You crane your neck upward, trying to take in the whole span. It flickers faintly, fading then returning, like a reluctant guest. You half expect someone to whisper, "Don't scare it away," the way kids warn you about butterflies. The people begin to sing, softer than the thunderous ceremonies of before. This song is gentler, rising like mist, full of gratitude rather than demand. Quirky tidbit: some traditions say that rainbows could also be dangerous. They were seen as serpents slithering across the sky, drinking from rivers, or as arrows shot by gods. Children were told not to point directly at them, lest their fingers bend permanently. Naturally, you test this by sneaking a tiny point skyward. Nothing happens, unless you count the old woman glaring at you like you just hexed the whole valley. Smooth move. The shaman sprinkles maize flour on the ground, tracing arcs that mirror the rainbow overhead. Women scatter flower petals in curved lines, and children chase each other under the imagined bridges. The air feels lighter, as though the sky is loosening its grip. You breathe deeper than you have in days, even though the soil beneath your feet is still cracked. Hope, apparently, hydrates better than water bottles. Historians still argue whether rainbows were celebrated as cosmic signs or simply folded into myth after particularly well-timed storms. Standing here, though, the scholarly debate feels irrelevant. You can see what it does to the people, the way their shoulders straighten, their voices brighten, their movements regain energy. Belief itself is as nourishing as rain. A group of youths begin to dance, weaving in and out of one another in arcing steps, imitating the curve of the rainbow. Their cloaks ripple like shifting colors. A boy whistles, high and wavering, mimicking birds that often appear after rain. The sound cuts the air clean, startling but refreshing, like biting into fruit you thought would be bland but turns out mouth-wateringly sweet. As the arc lingers, more offerings are brought forward. Not gold this time, not emeralds. Instead, bowls of water are lifted to the sky, reflecting the rainbow's colors on their surfaces. Families hold the bowls carefully, then pour them back into the soil, returning what little moisture they can. You kneel with them, feeling the dirt greedily soak it up. It's not much, but it feels symbolic, a way of telling the earth, we're with you. Hold on. The rainbow begins to fade as the sun climbs higher. Children shout, "Don't go," and adults hush them, reminding them that all signs must pass. You catch yourself holding your breath, as if trying to keep the colors pinned in place with sheer will. But slowly, inevitably, the arc dissolves back into the sky. Yet no one looks disappointed. Instead, they smile, content. The shaman raises his staff once more, declaring the sign received, the promise marked. The people disperse with lighter steps, as though the drought has already cracked, even if the fields still wait for water. That night, as you lie beneath the stars, you think about promises written not on paper but in skylight. About how fragile hope can look, faint and shimmering, but how strong it feels when shared. The rainbow didn't feed anyone, didn't drench the soil, didn't fill the rivers. But it gave breath, and sometimes, breath is enough to last another day. The days stretch on, each sunrise carrying the same brittle air, each field sighing under the weight of dust. But the rainbow has left something behind, an ember of belief that refuses to go out. Tonight, you follow the people again, this time not to the plaza or a mountain slope but back to the lake. The path is quiet, boots scuffing soil, bundles carried carefully. Everyone holds their breath, as though afraid the promise might crumble if spoken too loudly. At the water's edge, the shaman waits, cloaked in dark feathers that shine faintly under torchlight. He raises his hands to the crowd, then dips them into a gourd filled with golden dust. Yes, dust. Not coins or ornaments, but the glittering remains of hammered ornaments and ground flakes saved for this exact purpose. He lifts the gourd high, and the firelight makes the particles dance like captured stars. Here's your historical fact. The famous legend of El Dorado traces back to Muisca rituals at lakes like Guatavita, where chiefs, sometimes coated head to toe in gold dust, offered treasures to the waters as prayers for fertility and rain. It wasn't about wealth in the way outsiders later imagined, it was devotion, a shimmering plea for balance. The shaman dips his hand into the gourd and scatters dust across the lake. The particles shimmer in the torchlight, tiny suns floating briefly before sinking. The crowd exhales together, as though convinced that each speck is a word carried straight to Chibchacum. You can't help but imagine the gods squinting down. Oh great, more glitter. My cosmic carpet will never be clean again. Quirky tidbit. Some accounts claim gold dust wasn't just thrown into water but mixed into drinks for ceremonial toasts. Imagine raising a cup of liquid sunlight, then realizing you've basically invented the world's fanciest glitter latte. Tasty? Probably not. Sparkly burps? Guaranteed. One by one, others step forward. Men scatter flakes saved for years, women pour out tiny golden frogs or birds, children offer the smallest trinkets. The air smells faintly metallic as dust clings to the mist. It's beautiful and unnerving all at once, like watching treasure dissolve into silence. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were timed with astronomical cycles, drought patterns, or political events. Some suggest they were annual, others that they happened only when crises loomed. Standing here, The debate doesn't matter. What matters is the hush of the people, the shimmer of gold on water, the way every gesture says, "Please, just one storm." The offerings grow more elaborate. An emerald the size of your thumb is tossed, flashing green before vanishing. A golden disc is lowered gently, ripples carrying its glow outward. Then, the chief himself steps forward, bare-chested, his skin already smeared with golden powder. Attendants sprinkle more across his shoulders, arms, face, until he gleams like a living sun. When he steps into the water, the crowd gasps. The lake reflects his glow, doubling him, making it seem as though two suns have fallen to earth. He wades deeper, scattering dust with each step. The water carries his glow outward until it looks as if the entire lake is smoldering. You blink, half convinced you're watching the surface ignite. The chief pauses waist deep, raises his hands to the sky, and lets the final gourd of dust spill between his fingers. It hovers briefly, then sinks, swallowed by the dark. The crowd cheers softly, not with thunder, but with relief. You feel goosebumps crawl across your arms, partly from the chill, partly from awe. Imagine standing in the middle of a cosmic spotlight, praying the audience above applauds. When the chief returns to shore, the people embrace him, pressing foreheads to his gleaming skin, smearing gold onto themselves. The powder clings to their cheeks, noses, even the tips of eyelashes. You catch your reflection in the water, your own face streaked faintly, as if the lake decided you, too, needed a little sparkle. Congratulations, you're now 5% closer to looking like a festival float. The ceremony closes with song, soft and slow, voices carrying across the lake. The gold has sunk, the dust has vanished, but the shimmer lingers in memory, imprinted on the surface of your eyes. You turn back toward the village, steps lighter than before. As you walk, you think about wealth, how elsewhere it binds, hoards, piles up in vaults. Here, it is given away, released, returned to silence. You wonder how different the world would be if every society threw its riches into lakes, trusting ripples more than ledgers. The night air is cool, and though no raindrops fall, you swear the mist feels heavier, wetter, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, the gods are stirring. The air is swollen, thick enough that each breath feels like drinking soup. The horizon quivers with heat, and even the birds have gone silent, as though waiting. You stand with the people once again, this time not in celebration but in tense expectation. The sky is bruised with heavy clouds, darker than you've seen in weeks. A faint rumble drags across the mountains like a restless giant shifting in its sleep. The shaman steps forward, his cloak damp with mist already seeping from the air. He raises his arms, chanting the name of Chipchikam, not as a plea now but as acknowledgement, an announcement that the storm is here. The crowd answers with a murmur, voices low but steady, as though bracing themselves. Children cling to their mothers, wide-eyed, half-thrilled, half-frightened. Even you feel your chest tighten. This isn't a gentle sprinkle arriving, this is a storm preparing to make an entrance worthy of applause. Here's your historical fact. The Muisca didn't only fear storms, they revered them. Floods were destructive, yes, but rain was also survival. A storm arriving after drought was both terrifying and miraculous, a reminder that the god's hand could strike and caress in the same breath. The first lightning bolt cracks open the sky, so bright it sears your vision. A heartbeat later, thunder explodes, shaking the ground beneath your sandals. The children squeal, some laughing, some crying, while the adults bow their heads. You instinctively duck, as though crouching might help against the literal sky throwing fire. Smooth move. Rain follows, not a drizzle but a sudden downpour, slamming the earth with relentless force. It drums rooftops, rattles leaves, pounds soil into mud. You're drenched in seconds, water plastering your clothes to your skin. The people shout, not in panic, but in joy. They lift bowls, hands, even their faces upward, catching every drop. Some laugh wildly, spinning in circles, while others kneel, pressing foreheads to the soaked ground. Quirky tidbit: some myths say rainstorms were Chibchacum stomping across the heavens, each footstep a thunderclap, each shake of his hair a lightning strike. If that's true, tonight he must be dancing the world's angriest salsa across the Andes. You half expect him to yell down, "You wanted rain, right? Don't say I never deliver." The storm intensifies. Wind howls through the village, ripping feathers from cloaks, scattering petals into the air. Torches sputter and die, plunging everything into a strange, silver twilight lit only by lightning flashes. Each bolt reveals the faces around you, eyes wide, mouths open, hair whipping. It feels like standing in a strobe-lit concert, except the DJ is a furious weather god with zero chill. Historians still argue whether people sought shelter during such storms or if rituals demanded they remain exposed. Tonight, no one flees. They stay in the plaza, arms lifted, drenched to the bone, singing louder to compete with thunder. The songs are jagged, broken by laughter and shouts, but they carry, weaving into the roar of rain. You stumble as the ground shifts under rushing water, mud sucking at your feet. A boy grabs your hand, steadying you with a grin that says, "Welcome to the chaos." Together you watch as the fields drink greedily, rivulets carving new paths, the parched earth turning soft again. The smell is intoxicating: wet soil, crushed leaves, ozone. You inhale so deeply you nearly choke on it. Worth it. The storm rages on, not gently, not mercifully, but fully. The people don't resist, they embrace it. Some even dance, stomping in puddles, sending sprays of water higher. One elder raises a gourd of chicha, tips it into the sky, then drinks the rain straight from above. It's both hilarious and oddly profound, like a cosmic toast exchanged with the storm itself. Lightning splits a tree at the edge of the village, the crack echoing sharp as bone breaking. The crowd gasps, then cheers, interpreting it not as danger but as a sign Chibchacum's presence, raw and undeniable. You, meanwhile, quietly decide that standing near tall objects in a lightning storm is not in your survival manual. Hours pass, though it feels timeless, like the storm suspends ordinary reality. When the rain finally eases, tapering to a steady patter, the people remain standing, soaked and trembling but radiant. Crops glisten under torchlight, newly alive. Streams surge where only dust lay before. The earth itself seems to sigh in relief, its thirst finally quenched. You collapse onto a rock, water dripping from your hair, your body buzzing with adrenaline. The people begin to chant softer now, shifting from fierce invocation to gentle thanks. Their voices blend with the lingering patter, a lullaby after the chaos. The storm has passed, leaving behind both destruction and renewal. You glance at the dark sky, still streaked with faint flashes, and think, sometimes the answer isn't gentle. Sometimes the gods reply like a floodgate breaking, all at once, impossible to ignore. The storm leaves behind a hush, not silence exactly, but the deep quiet that follows exhaustion. Water still trickles through the fields, gurgling down paths that were dusty trails only yesterday. Puddles glint like mirrors, each one holding scraps of sky. You walk slowly, squelching through mud, your sandals giving those undignified suction sounds with every step. Nothing says sacred aftermath quite like wet shoes refusing to let go. The people are already moving, as though instinct tells them not to waste a second. Farmers kneel by their fields, hands pushing maize seeds into softened earth. Children help pat soil back down, their tiny palms making it firm. You watch, realizing that this is the heartbeat of survival, planting immediately, trusting the storm has reset the balance. Here's your historical fact. Maize wasn't just a crop for the Muisca, it was central to their cosmology and economy. It shaped festivals, daily meals, and even offerings. Rain returning meant not only life but the chance to celebrate again with music, drink, and harvest rituals. Everywhere you look, there's evidence of renewal. Leaves gleam, frogs croak loudly from ditches that hadn't seen water in weeks, and the air itself feels washed clean. You tilt your face upward, the clouds have thinned, and the first stars are peeking through, faint pinpricks of reassurance. The people notice too, pointing and murmuring, as though stars themselves are messengers confirming that life goes on. Quirky tidbit: some oral traditions say that after great storms, rainbow serpents slithered through the wet fields, blessing them with fertility. You squint at a wriggling earthworm in the mud and think, well, maybe that's the downgraded version. Not exactly majestic, but hey, still good for the soil. The celebration grows naturally, like water pooling in a hollow. Musicians bring out flutes and drums, instruments still damp but ready to sing. A rhythm rises, steady and playful, matched by laughter. People stomp barefoot in the mud, creating a kind of squishy percussion. You can't resist joining, and soon you're part of a circle, slipping and sliding, your arms linked with strangers who suddenly feel like family. The shaman stands nearby, quieter than before, his face illuminated by firelight. He watches the dancing, nodding slowly, as though satisfied that the people know how to balance gratitude with joy. You notice he carries a gourd again, not with gold this time, but with seeds. He scatters them deliberately into the wet soil around the plaza. Each arc of seeds seems like a reminder: storms pass, but planting ensures continuity. Historians still argue whether such post-storm rituals were spontaneous or scheduled parts of Muisca tradition. Were they instinctive outbursts of relief, or were they embedded in a ceremonial calendar? Watching the people now, you think the answer might be both. Relief can become ritual, repeated until it turns into memory shared across generations. Food appears as though conjured: roasted tubers, chicha poured generously, steaming bowls of maize porridge. The smell alone makes your stomach growl loud enough to earn a chuckle from a nearby grandmother. She pats your arm, hands you a gourd, and says something that clearly means eat before you fall over. You obey, tasting warmth, sweetness, and the faint tang of fermentation that makes your head buzz pleasantly. The children chase each other around puddles, splashing so wildly that adults give up trying to scold them. The air is filled with shouts, laughter, and the steady hum of crickets, louder now after the rain. Somewhere in the distance, a jaguar coughs, a reminder that the world outside the village is awake too, testing the new wet ground. You shiver slightly but smile. Even predators must celebrate drink after drought. You pause to look at the fields once more. Sprouts haven't broken through yet, but you can already imagine them, tiny green blades piercing mud, rising like hope solidified. You realize this is why the people endure the cycles of drought and storm. Each ending is a beginning, each hardship a rehearsal for resilience. And because you're you, your mind drifts briefly. If these farmers could time travel to a modern grocery store, their jaws would probably hit the floor. Rows of maize-based snacks, entire aisles of chips, popcorn machines. Rain would suddenly feel like an instant Netflix binge trigger. Imagine explaining Doritos to someone who just coated themselves in gold dust to pray for corn. The music shifts to slower beats, the firelight flickers higher, and voices rise in songs that sound half lullaby, half victory chant. You lean back, hands braced against the damp ground, watching sparks float upward to meet the first true stars. Your body aches from the storm, the mud, the dancing, but it's a good ache, the kind that says you were part of something that mattered. The people drift toward rest one by one, some curling near fires, others returning to huts. The shaman lingers, scattering the last of his seeds before vanishing into the night. The rain has ended, but its memory will live in every sprout, every harvest, every story retold at gatherings. You lie back in the mud-soaked earth, not caring about your soggy clothes anymore. Above, constellations spread across the sky, brighter than before, as if washed by the storm. For the first time in days, you feel your breath slow, your body unwinding. Renewal isn't just for fields, it's creeping into your bones too. The stars stretch above you, scattered like flecks of powdered silver, each one sharp against the velvet black sky. The earth beneath you is still damp, seeping through your clothes, but you don't care. The coolness feels grounding, as though the world itself is reminding you to sink, to rest, to remember. Around you, the village grows quiet, fires collapsing into embers, laughter fading into yawns, flutes left leaning against walls. The storm has passed, the crops are planted, and life hums in that gentle, exhausted way that comes only after both struggle and triumph. The people lie down on mats or directly on the ground, families curled together. A mother hums to her baby, the melody soft as a breeze through maize stalks. You hear the shuffle of someone dragging a log closer to the fire, the crackle answering with sparks. Everything feels slower now, as though the world itself is exhaling after holding its breath far too long. Here's your historical fact. The Muisca calendar was intricately tied to agricultural cycles, with rituals carefully timed to planting and harvest. Rain, drought, stars all were measured, observed, woven into a rhythm that guided life. These nights after storms weren't random pauses, they were sacred intervals in the grand pattern. You glance at the shaman again, now seated near the lake's edge. He's quiet, almost invisible, but you notice his hands tracing lines in the mud. Circles, spirals, intersecting arcs, patterns that could be maps of the cosmos or doodles from a bored child. Historians still argue whether such designs were calendars, divinations, or simply meditations. Watching him, you realize the line between all three might not matter. Sometimes drawing is just a way to whisper back to the universe. The lake is calm again, its surface holding a faint shimmer from starlight. Somewhere beneath lies gold, emeralds, figurines, treasures intentionally surrendered. You wonder if future divers, centuries later, will find them and misunderstand, imagining greed rather than devotion. You want to shout across time. It wasn't about wealth, it was about rain. It was about life. But your voice would dissolve like dust in water. Quirky tidbit: some legends claimed the gods could hear prayers better when whispered over still water at night, as though liquid was the universe's best Wi-Fi connection. You glance at the lake, half tempted to test it with a modern request. Maybe, please, let my phone battery last longer tomorrow. Sacred, yet practical. The night deepens. Frogs croak along the shoreline, their rhythm steady, almost hypnotic. An owl hoots from the trees. The people sleep easily now, their bodies trusting the ground again. You feel your eyelids heavy too, but you fight it, unwilling to let go of this final image. Goldsmiths hammering light into offerings, storms pounding the soil awake, laughter after hardship, the echo of songs. It all folds together into something timeless. The quiet traditions of goldsmiths and rain rituals aren't locked in the past, they ripple forward, echoing in every act of faith, every feast after drought, every sparkle that reminds you wealth is measured not in what you keep but in what you give away. You close your eyes, the sounds dimming, the stars still sharp behind your lids. The journey is finished, but its shimmer clings, just like the last traces of gold dust after a ceremony, stubbornly glittering on your skin. The night slows, stretching into long, drowsy strands. The storm has passed, the fires have softened, and even the frogs seem to croak in halftime now. You lie still, the damp earth beneath you no longer an intrusion but a cradle, holding you steady. Your breaths come slower, deeper, each one a tide rolling in and out. Around you, the echoes of the day dissolve. The hammering of gold, the chanting at the lake, the pounding rain, each sound drifts farther away until it becomes only memory, faint and sweet. What lingers instead is calm, the hush of soil drinking quietly, the glimmer of stars unmoving, the weight of silence that feels safe rather than lonely. Your body unwinds. Shoulders sink, Hands soften, even the small muscles in your face loosen, as though they too are finally ready to rest. The people sleep nearby, families curled in warmth, the last embers glowing gently like tiny suns hidden in the dark. You realize you're part of their circle now, part of this rhythm that is bigger than storms, bigger than gold, bigger even than time. The sky above seems endless, but your gaze grows heavy, your eyes tugged downward by the soft insistence of rest. And that's all right. The stars will remain, the lake will hold its secrets, the seeds will sprout when they are ready. You don't need to watch it all. You only need to drift. So breathe in once more, slow and deep. Let it out longer than before. Let the last traces of thunder fade, let the shimmer of gold turn into dreamlight, and let yourself fall gently into sleep.